Okay, this is practice page 1-9, so it's from Unit 1, Lesson 9. On page 1-6, we did adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. Now we're using adding and subtracting with unlike denominators, and also we have a lot of mixed numbers here. So whenever we are working with fractions, if they have different denominators, we can't add or subtract them until we have a common denominator. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the workspace next to the problem. Our first problem says 4 3/4 plus 1 1/2. So the good thing about halves and fourths is if you think about quarters and money, it makes it a little easier in your head. And halves and fourths are some of the most common fractions that you'll have to work with in your life. I'm going to rewrite my whole numbers and then write my new fraction. In order to find a common denominator, one of the strategies you can look at is to see if one of your denominators is a multiple of the other. When I skip count by 2's, I say 4, so 4 is a multiple of 2, so I don't have to change my first fraction. I just have to change my second one. Remember, when you are adjusting your fractions to create an equivalent one with fourths on the bottom, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So I multiply 2 times 2 to get 4, so I have to do 1 times 2. So 1/2 becomes 2/4. Now I can add. 4 plus 1 is 5. When you're adding with common denominators, your denominator stays the same. 3 plus 2 is 5. Now, in order to put this in its final form, I have to check my fraction. This is an improper fraction, which means it's greater than 1. We're working with fourths, so 4/4 is equal to 1 whole. So I'm going to look here and see how many fourths I have. I have 1 whole extra one here. So I have 1 whole fourth here, and how many fourths do I have left over? Well, I pulled out 4/4. 5 minus 4 is 1. Now I need to combine my 5 and my 1 1/4 to give me an answer of 6 1/4. You have to make sure that you remember to add your new mixed number to whatever your whole number was over here. Okay, let's move on to, I'm going to skip down to number 9 because it gives me the most room to use, and also this is now a subtraction problem. A big mistake that people sometimes make is they start going fast and they either start doing all addition or all subtraction, so it's important to look at whatever your sign is. I see my subtraction sign here. I'm going to get ready to write my new equivalent fractions on the side that will have a common denominator. I'm going to record my whole number over here so I don't forget it. Now, my denominators are 15 and 5. My strategy again, I'm going to say, is one of them a multiple of the other? I'm going to look at the smaller number first. When I skip count by 5s, do I say 15? 5, 10, 15? Yes. So I'm not going to change my 11/15. I'm going to change my 5, or my fifths, into 15ths. What do you multiply 5 by to get to 15? You multiply it by 3. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator, times 3. So I'll have 15. 2 times 3 is 6. Now we will subtract. 5 minus 1 is 4. 11 minus 6 is 5. 4 5/16, or 5/15, I'm sorry, but we're not in our final form yet because I can simplify this fraction. We simplify by pulling out a common number. So we divide out a number from the 5 and the 15 to give us our fraction in the simplest form. I'm going to bring my whole number over so I don't forget it. Thinking about what 5 and 15 can both be divided by, 5 can be divided by 1 in itself. When I think about 15, it can be divided by 5. So I'll divide my numerator by 5 and get 1. And then I'll divide my denominator by 5 and get 3. So my answer is 4 1/3. Now 1/3 and 5/15 are equivalent fractions, but in its simplest form, it is 1/3. So this is the final form of your answer that you should be aiming for. Looking down at our word problems, again, the strategy we use to solve it is cubes. Circle the number, underline the question, box keywords, write an equation, and solve. When my brother was 3 months old, he weighed 13 1/4 pounds. Now he is 6 months old and he weighs 17 1/8 pounds. How much weight did he gain? I'm going to box weight and I'm going to box pounds because we're measuring weight in pounds. And then I'm going to write pounds on the line to make sure that I don't forget to label my answer. So we want to know how much weight he gained over time. The 3 and the 6 of his ages just tell us which number came first. So we're not going to use the 3 and the 6. What we need to find is the difference in the amount of weight, so what he gained. So we are going to take what he weighs now, 17 1/8, minus what he weighed before, 13 1/4. And we are going to subtract. You'll notice now that this problem looks a lot like these up here. We're going to use the same process to solve it. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions over here so that my fractions get a common denominator. I'll put my whole numbers first so I don't forget them. And then I'm going to put my fraction bar for my new fractions. Looking at my denominators of 8 and 4, when I skip count by 4s, I say 8, so 8 is a multiple of 4. So I don't have to change this fraction here. I can keep it as 17 and then the 1/8. Down here, I'm going to have to change my fourths into eighths. The way that we'll do that is multiply 4 times 2, and then whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator, 1 times 2. So then we have our 1/4 becomes 2/8. And we are going to subtract. Now here, if you're looking, you'll see that we've run into a bit of a problem because we can't take 2/8 away from 1/8. So in order to then solve this, since I have a bigger number as what I'm taking away, I'm going to look at my 17 and take one of the wholes from 17 and ungroup it into my fractional parts. So I'll rewrite my 13 2/8 down here. That's going to stay the same. From the 17, I'm going to take away one whole from the whole number, so that will become 16. And a whole, when we're talking about eighths, is 8/8. So I'm going to add those 8/8 that I took out of here and add them to what I already had. 8 plus 1 gives us 9/8. Now we can subtract. 16 minus 13 equals 3. 9/8 minus 2/8, the eighth stays the same, that's our common denominator. 9 minus 2 is 7. So he gained 3 7/8 pounds. Now that we have done one addition, one subtraction, and one word problem, I'm going to bring us back up to the top and we're going to continue through these problems because there's going to be different strategies that you'll use in order to get those common denominators. So up here we have 5 3/7 plus 5 1/4. Now I'm going to rewrite my whole numbers and put my fraction bars over here because I know I have to get common denominators. Looking at the 7 and the 4, one is not a multiple of the other. So when I skip count by 4s, I will not say 7. And when I skip count by 7s, I will not say 4. So we want to find the least common multiple between 7 and 4. So I am going to write my multiples of 7, 7, 14, 21, 28. I'm going to stop right there because some of these numbers look a little familiar to me. Now I'm going to skip count by 4s and see if I say any of those numbers. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. I see that the least common multiple between 7 and 4 is 28. So I know that my common denominator is going to be 28. Here is where things differ a little bit. Your 3/7, whatever you did to change your sevenths into 28ths, Whatever you did to that denominator, you have to do to just the numerator of the 7s. So 7 times 4 equals 28. 3 times 4 equals 12. So my new fraction would be 12/28. Looking at 4, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 4 times 7 is 28. 1 times 7 is 7. Now that I noticed that I multiplied my 7 by 4 and my 4 by 7, in order to get the least common multiple, so the smallest number that these two digits have in common, I could have multiplied 7 times 4 in order to find that 28. So now I have 5 and 12/28 plus 5 and 7/28. So I'll get 10 with my whole numbers. Can't forget to add those. I'm going to write my 28 because my denominator will not change now. And I'm going to do 12 plus 7. And I will get 19/28. We can look and see if we can put this in final form, but when I think about 19, that doesn't come up in any of my fast facts, so it can just be divided by 19 and 1. And then 28, they don't have anything in common, so our final form will be 10 and 19/28. Let's look at a subtraction problem. Let's look at number 5. 5 says 9 and 5/6 minus 1 and 2/9. Rewrite your whole numbers so you don't forget. You can bring your sign over too if you're someone that's like, ooh, I kind of forgot we were doing addition there. It helps you remember. And bring over your fraction bars. We want to find the least common multiple of 6 and 9. Because when you skip count by 6s, you don't say 9. And when you skip count by 9s, you don't say 6. I'm going to write them over here in this space. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. I'm going to stop there because some of those numbers look familiar with my 9s. 9, 18. Oh, I can stop right there. The least common multiple for 6 and 9 is 18. I'm going to write that as my denominator. Now we have to think about what you did to your 6ths and your 9ths in order to change them into 18ths. I multiplied my 6 times 3 in order to get to 18. Whatever you do to the numerator or the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. 5 times 3, which will give us 15. Now we look down here. We did 9 times 2 to get to 18. So we have to do 2 times 2, which gives us 4. And now we subtract. 9 minus 1 is 8. I'm going to bring down my 18ths because that will not change. 15 minus 4 will give us 11. And that is our final form. So our answer is 8 and 11/18. Okay? Take your time on your word problems. Make sure that you show your work and you figure out, because since up here it's either adding or subtracting, down here when you solve these problems you need to determine if you have to add or subtract. You can look for keywords. And if there's a change over time and you're figuring out the difference, like we did here, you had to do subtraction to see what changed since there was a change. Make sure you look for your keywords and use your cube strategy in order to help you. And at the end of the video will be the answer key.